We are surrounded by AI. It's everywhere. But with all its power, we're facing this huge and honestly pretty much unsolved problem, the accountability gap. So let's dive into what that really means.
It seems like such a simple question, right? When an AI messes up, whose fault is it? But the answer is, well, it's incredibly complicated. Is it the person using it? The programmer who wrote the code? The company that deployed it? Or, and here's a weird one, could it even be the AI itself? This is the central mystery we're going to try and unpack together.
So, to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to wrap our heads around a brand new and kind of unsettling idea. AI has basically created a world of action without responsibility.
And that brings us to a key concept for this whole conversation. It's called non-biological action without responsibility, or NBAWR. Think about it. For literally all of human history, an action was tied to an actor, a person who could feel the consequences, right? Pride, guilt, a sense of duty. But now, for the very first time, we have these powerful actions being taken by things that feel absolutely nothing.
And these synthetic agents, they're just fundamentally different from us. They operate at speeds we can't even comprehend, and they do it with zero fear of getting hurt or punished. They don't have any memory of what it feels like when something goes wrong, and they have absolutely no skin in the game. This changes everything.
Here's where we often get it wrong. We say things like, the AI decided, or the algorithm chose to do that. But that's kind of a fiction. AI systems don't really decide anything. They just execute the incredibly complex instructions that people gave them. The responsibility? It never actually leaves the human chain.
So, if the responsibility stays with us, with the humans, but the action is being taken by a machine, what happens in that space between? Well, that's where we find this really dangerous thing called the responsibility vacuum.
And this is the direct result of that NBAWR we were talking about. When you have so many different people who have touched a system, but then a machine takes the final action, who really feels like they own that outcome? The answer, way too often, is nobody. That's the responsibility vacuum. It's where accountability just goes to die.
This creates this totally fundamental mismatch. Look at this. On one side, the law says humans are liable, but on the other, the actual doing, the execution, is performed by synthetic agents. We've built a system where people can get punished for behaviors they didn't directly perform, and in many cases can't even control.
And the fallout from this mismatch? It is seriously toxic for an organization. You get managers who become afraid to innovate, a culture that just shifts to finding scapegoats. People become terrified to speak up, and eventually, this kind of moral numbness can just spread through the entire company.
What this all adds up to is that the automation starts to act like a kind of moral buffer. It makes the harm less visible, and it diffuses that feeling of responsibility. This leads to what's called systemic moral hazard, where organizations start taking bigger and bigger risks because no single person feels the full weight of what could go wrong.
Okay, so that's the problem, and it's a huge one. But we're not just here to point out the issue. The real question is, how in the world do we fix it? Well, the answer might be in creating a completely new map for accountability.
This map is called the Chaos Framework. It's designed to give us a clear path through this confusing new territory by setting up 3 core principles.
First up is causal containment. Okay, that sounds really technical, but in simple terms, it just means we have to stop blaming the person who pushed the final button. Instead, we have to look deeper to the people who actually design the system's behavior, the ones with true causal control.
So who are those people? Well, they're the ones who pick the AI models, the ones who curate the data it learns from, the ones who design the reward functions that shape its goals, and the ones who set the policies for how it's deployed. See? Accountability belongs here, with the architects of the system, not just its end users.
Second, we've got the accountability horizon. You can think of this as a line in the sand. It's the point beyond which responsibility just becomes meaningless, because no human can genuinely understand what happened, feel any sense of ownership, or realistically step in. And the rule is simple. High-stakes systems must never, ever operate beyond this horizon.
And the third principle, this is the non-negotiable bottom line. We can delegate tasks to machines, that's fine, but we can never, ever delegate our moral burdens. Things like guilt, duty, ethics, these are fundamentally human, and any system that pretends they're not is just broken from the very start.
So, these principles don't just give us a new map, they lead us to a really critical conclusion about who must ultimately, always, be in command.
Here's the problem. Our old models for oversight, committees, review boards, they just don't work anymore. A lot of the time, they have no direct way to actually intervene in what the system is doing. This creates something called governance without hands. We have authority that's just symbolic, not really operational.
So how do we make governance real again? This framework demands 4 concrete actions. First, humans need a big red button, absolute hard stop authority. Second, any high-impact system has to be able to explain itself. Third, teams have to actually practice manual takeovers. And finally, accountability has to be formally mapped out to the people who are actually designing the system in the first place.
So here's the crucial point, the big picture. For thousands of years, our societies have been built on this stable, solid link between an actor, their action, and their accountability. AI is starting to break that chain. And the warning here is that this doesn't just lead to business risks, it leads to ethical disintegration.
This quote really just gets to the heart of it all. The danger isn't necessarily some rogue AI, some sci-fi villain. It's something much quieter, much more subtle. A world where these immense actions are taken, but no single human fully experiences the moral weight of having acted.
And this leads us to the ultimate conclusion. Keeping final authority in human hands isn't just a good idea or a feature you add later on. It is a fundamental, non-negotiable constraint that we have to build into our technology if we want our civilization to hold together.
I just want to end on this final, incredibly powerful thought. The stakes here, well, they couldn't be higher. Accountability is the glue that holds our complex systems and our entire society together. And where it evaporates, collapse isn't hypothetical. It's inevitable.